I'm Peter Whitmore. I'm 73 years old, and I'm sitting at my kitchen table with one light on because the rest of the house feels too big when it's quiet. 6 years ago my wife, Susan, died in hospice, and before she went to sleep for the last time she looked at me like she was trying to hand me something I couldn't drop. She said, "Peter, we wasted so much time being right instead of being close." I nodded like I understood. I even said, "No, we didn't, because that's what I did. I corrected things. I explained things. I defended our life like it was a report card." But I've had 6 years to sit with those words, and I can tell you now I didn't understand them until the house got quiet enough that there was nowhere for me to hide. People who didn't live inside our marriage still talk about us like we were a success story. 41 years. 2 children. A paid-off house. No scandals. No divorce. We went to church most Sundays until we stopped. We hosted Thanksgiving most years until Susan got tired of cooking for people who left early. We were steady. And steady, I thought, was the same thing as good. In the mornings now, I still reach for the second mug. I don't even mean to. It's muscle memory. Then I set it back in the cabinet like I'm putting away a mistake. The cabinet door makes a soft click, and that sound feels like a verdict. I'm telling you this for you, not for me. I'm not looking for anyone to tell me I did my best. I've had enough of that. I'm telling it because the kind of damage I'm talking about doesn't announce itself. It doesn't storm out. It just thins out your life, little by little, until one day you realize you've been living beside someone, not with them. When Susan and I married, I was 32 and she was 28. It was 1978. I was working as an assistant manager at a hardware store on Main Street. I wore those stiff dress shirts that never quite fit right, and I felt proud of being needed. Susan worked at the library, the old brick one with the smell of paper and dust. She loved it there. She knew everyone's name. She came home with stories about children asking for dinosaur books and old men who wanted the newspaper even though it was already 2 days old. We didn't have much, but we laughed a lot. We ate spaghetti 3 nights a week because it was cheap. We had a little table with a wobbly leg, and Susan used folded napkins to steady it. At night, we'd sit on the couch and talk about nothing and everything. Her feet would be tucked under my thigh, and I would rub her toes like it was the most natural thing in the world. I remember one winter evening, early on, when the power went out. We lit candles and played cards on the floor. Susan told me she wanted to see Scotland someday. Her grandmother had come over from there, and Susan kept a faded photograph of that woman in a frame by the bedroom mirror. Susan said she wanted to stand where she came from. She said it like it mattered, but not like a demand. More like a quiet hope. I said, "Sure. Someday." And to me, someday sounded generous. What happened wasn't one big betrayal. It was a slow shift in what I thought my role was. We had our first child in 1981, and then our second in 1984. Money got tighter, and I got more serious. I started picking up extra hours. Then I took a promotion at a larger store across town. The commute was longer, the pay was better, and I told myself that was love. Providing. Being reliable. Not letting the family slip. Susan didn't complain the way some people might. She adapted. She always did. She learned to drive the kids to school and soccer. She learned which bills could be paid late without the lights being shut off. She learned to fix the zipper on my coat and patch my work pants when I tore them. She learned to keep her tiredness to herself. At first, she still reached for me in small ways. She'd say, "Let's go for a walk after dinner," and I'd say, "Not tonight. My feet are killing me." She'd suggest we take a Saturday and go to the lake like we used to, and I'd say, "We've got errands." She'd ask, "Do you want to take a class with me?" Pottery, maybe, and I'd laugh and say, "What am I going to do with a mug I made?" I wasn't cruel. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't slamming doors. I was just always slightly unavailable, like the relationship was something that could be paused and resumed later. Susan would talk to me while she cooked, and I'd answer from the living room with my eyes on the television. She'd tell me about a woman at the library who cried quietly at the reference desk because her husband had left, and Susan would say, "It broke my heart," and I'd say, "That's a shame," without turning my head. Sometimes she'd stop stirring the pot and just stand there, wooden spoon in her hand, like she was waiting for me to look at her. If I did look up, I'd ask what was wrong. And she would smile a little and say, "Nothing. Just thinking." I didn't know that nothing was often the sound of someone giving up on being heard. The thing is, there were stretches where we seemed fine. We went to the kids' graduations. We worked in the yard together. We took family photos in front of the Christmas tree. People saw us and thought, "There's a couple who made it." And I believed that, because I believed marriage was mostly endurance. Susan started doing more things without me. Book club. Lunches with her sister. Volunteering at the school. It didn't scare me. It actually relieved me. I thought, good, she's busy too. Less pressure on me to be interesting. When the kids moved out, I expected we would circle back to each other naturally, like a rubber band snapping back. I imagined retirement as this wide-open space where we'd finally do all the things we'd put off. I imagined time like it was owed to us. But by then, Susan had learned how to live with the shape of my absence. She didn't nag. She didn't plead. She just stopped asking. And that, I can tell you, is the most dangerous stage. When someone stops asking. There's a particular memory I can't shake. We were in our late 50s. Susan had made coffee and set 2 cups on the counter. She was wearing that blue sweater she liked, the one with the small buttons. She said, casually, "Do you ever wonder what we'll do when it's just us?" I said, "We'll be fine. We've always been fine." She nodded, and she poured cream into her cup, but she didn't drink it. She just stared into it for a moment like she was looking for an answer at the bottom. Now I see it. She wasn't asking about logistics. She was asking if I still knew her. Then came the spring of her diagnosis. March. We'd gone to her doctor because she kept losing weight and she couldn't keep food down. I remember the waiting room was too bright. A television was playing a daytime talk show, and nobody was watching it. Susan sat with her hands folded in her lap, so still I could have mistaken her for calm. The doctor came in and said, "Pancreatic cancer and advanced, and we'll do what we can." The words floated in the air like dust you can't catch. On the way home, Susan looked out the passenger window and said, very softly, "So that's that." I gripped the steering wheel and said, "We'll fight it." She didn't argue. She just kept looking out the window. The treatments were brutal. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and old coffee. I learned where every vending machine was. I learned how to fold those thin blankets at the foot of the chair where I slept. I learned how to read her face for pain because she didn't want to scare me. And in those months, the strange thing is, we finally talked. Not about the kids, not about the roof needing repairs, not about errands. We talked like people who realized the clock was real. One night in hospice, about 3 weeks before she died, Susan asked me if I remembered Scotland. I said, of course. She nodded and said, "I used to picture it when I couldn't sleep. The green hills. The wind. I wanted to stand there with you." I said, "We should have gone." She looked at me then, and her eyes weren't angry. That would have been easier. They were tired. She said, "I didn't want you to take me because you felt guilty. I wanted you to want to go." That sentence did something to me. It made me see all the years I treated her once like optional decorations, not like parts of her. After she died in July, the house filled with people for a while. Casseroles. Sympathy cards. Stories. Then the house emptied again, and it stayed empty. A few weeks later, I was going through her nightstand looking for paperwork, and I found a journal. I didn't even know she kept one. Her handwriting was neat, slanted slightly to the right. The first entries were about the kids, about the library, about funny things. Then, slowly, the tone changed. She wrote about feeling invisible. She wrote about trying to tell me things and watching my attention slide away. She wrote about the way I could be in the same room and still feel far. She also wrote about loving me, which was the worst part. Not loving some perfect version of me, but the real one, the one who kept choosing later. There was an entry from a Tuesday night, nothing special, where she wrote, "I asked him to sit with me for 10 minutes. He said after the news. After the news, he fell asleep." I don't remember that night. That's what makes me sick. For her, it was a wound. For me, it was just a Tuesday. Now I understand what she meant about being right instead of being close. I spent years making sure I was justified. Tired. Busy. Practical. Responsible. I treated closeness like a luxury, something you earn after everything else is handled. But everything else is never handled. Life just keeps handing you more. There are things you can't fix once someone is gone. You can't go back and listen better. You can't go back and say yes to the pottery class. You can't go back and take her hand on a walk you kept postponing. You can't go back and look at her the way she deserved to be looked at. People say time heals. I don't know about that. Time just makes the loss more familiar. Like living with a limp. You learn how to move, but you never forget you're injured. If you're listening and you have someone in your life, I won't tell you what to do. I'm not qualified to give orders. But I will tell you what I wish I'd done. I wish I'd treated her small invitations like they were sacred. I wish I'd understood that when she said, "Come sit with me," she wasn't asking for a favor. She was asking for her husband. I wish I'd asked her more questions even after decades. Not the practical ones. The real ones. What are you thinking about lately? What do you miss? What do you still want? And if this story lands somewhere in you, if it reminds you of something you've been putting off, you can tell me in the comments if you want. I read them. I sit here most evenings anyway. I keep that honeymoon photo of Susan on my desk. 1978, she's laughing, hair blown across her face, eyes narrowed from the sun. Sometimes I look at it and I try to remember the feeling of being 20-something and believing we had an endless supply of tomorrows. But I don't live there anymore. I live here, at 73, with one mug, one light, and a sentence I finally understand.